Сайн байцгаана уу хүнд үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр манай de facto нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын профессор, хуульч, олон улсын зохиогчийн эрхийн талаар зөвлөх ажил хийдэг ноён Kenneth КРУЗ гэж оролцож байна.
Kenneth КРУЗ, олон улсын зохиогчийн эрхийн зөвлөх. Профессор Kenneth КРУЗ Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын Northwestern их сургуульд түүх судлан, Вашингтоны их сургуулийг хуульч мэргэжлээр төгсөж, Калифорни их сургуульд магистр докторийн зэрэг хамгаалжээ. Олон улсын зохиогчийн эрхийн зөвлөх хуульч, өмгөөлөгч, зохиолч тэрээр оюун өмчийн асуудлаар 30 гаруй жил судалгаа хийж, бодлого боловсруулах, багшлах ажлыг тус хийжээ. Мөн их сургууль, соёл урлагийн ба хэвлэн нийтлэгч байгууллагуудын өмгөөлөгчөөр ажилладаг. Kenneth КРУЗ нь Америкийн нэгдсэн улсын 44 мууч болон дэлхийн олон оронд тухайлбал Парисын Сорбоны их сургууль, Мюнхен, Хельсинки, Кайро хотуудын их сургуульд зочин багшаар өргөдөн лекц уншиж байжээ. Мөн тэрээр Паттерсны нэрэмжит оюуны өмчийн шагналыг хүртсэн анхны Америк бөгөөд нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагын дэлхийн оюуны өмчийн байгууллага 191 орны номын сангийн оюуны өмчийн хууль тогтоомжийн тухайн судалгааны ажлыг хийж байна.
So, what is your mission now in Mongolia?
Why am I here? Well, I'm a guest of the Arts Council of Mongolia, and the timing is to participate in the Ulaanbaatar International Film Festival, and to talk about copyright and give some guidance and insights for filmmakers and other people who are supporting the film and arts industries here in Mongolia.
Please tell us about the issue of copyright in the film industry. Where are the most urgent or tough issues?
Be happy to help you with that. Let's build a foundation and then just see what isn't holding up quite right.
Please.
Copyright is a peculiar area of the law in that it applies in the sense that it gives a set of rights to a copyright owner automatically. You get them whether you want them or know about them or not. And so a filmmaker is producing creative work from the screenplay to the music to the finished film. And the issues that we have are issues related to the ownership of those rights. So it's not clear. If three of us get together and each of us contributes differently to the finished film, if we just rely on the defaults of the law, we're going to probably end up with a very unhappy situation where we have a three-way ownership in this film. And films, of course, have more people involved than just three. So it's important for the filmmaker to see himself or herself as a producer who's taking this finished work to market and needs to consolidate that ownership with the one person or one company so that you can effectively take it to market, so that these really fine motion pictures that are being produced here in Mongolia can find their way into the international market and find some viewers and find some financial and artistic success out there in the world marketplace. And so without managing these copyrights, they're going to be unable to enter into agreements with international distributors who need that assurance that all the rights are cleared.
So that means, say you said finished film, from the product perspective, you go back, you see author, music, many contributors.
And many
Isn't
contributors.
It not that before making, as I say, I'm a film producer, before that, do I need to agree with the other people that now final products will belong to me or to you, and this is some kind of settlement?
Actually, ideally, that would be the case. And so before bringing you on, if I'm the filmmaker, if I'm the film producer, and you're a composer, and I want your music in the film, ideally, before you start working, before you start composing the music and we start adding it to the film, we would have reached agreement. And it really would be an agreement. It's important, I think, for the filmmaker ordinarily to own the rights. But if you're an accomplished musician, you want to use those same compositions in your own performances in certain ways, and we can agree to that too. So the beauty of an agreement is we don't have to settle for a simple rule that says I get everything or you get everything. We can kind of take it apart and reach a more particularized kind of agreement as well. And that's very good, I think, for both of us and for the marketplace.
It is not the common thing?
It isn't common here. And so what we're trying to do through the Arts Council is raise...
You said, sir, before we go to Mongolia, it is common in the U.S., in the Hollywood and Bollywood.
It is. You go, the big films that you can name that show up in the theaters and on television, they've been managed in this kind of manner.
This management, just the process before we go to Mongolia, they say the box revenue, say.
Right.
And do they preliminary agree how to share? Then you say in 20 years from now, that movie suddenly become second birth and it's becoming very popular again.
Right.
Then it makes a huge ton of money. Then by that time, the children of those people, is it that arrangement is done?
And then we end up with a sequel to that one and a sequel to the next one and a remake of that movie. And we see this generation after generation.
Yes.
There are a couple things going on here. One is we through the agreement, we want to make sure that we've bundled all of those rights together with one production company. Now, maybe a piece of that, the rights would come back to you as the composer, so you can do performances and other kinds of things, and that can be done. That can be done as the parties agree. But think about that next generation, the sequel, whether it comes next year or 30 years from now, or the remake of the film. If then the question comes up, I want to do the sequel or the remake of your motion picture that you produced 25 years ago, I'm going to look for you to give me assurance that you have the rights. And if you're saying, and if you end up saying, well, you know, I think I did the right thing 25 years ago, here's my set of files, and we look at the files and you don't have clearances from the different contributors, then we run into problems. But even before we get to that down the road, even just on the first round, we're making the film this year. We want to start talking to distributors this year or next year and get it into some of these bigger markets around the world. One of the first things they're going to do is come back to the filmmaker and say, we love your movie, we think we can sell your movie. However, the agreement you sign with us says you guarantee that you have all the rights cleared. And if you don't have them cleared, then we probably can't do the deal. So we're really trying to help the filmmakers think about today, and if they can get today lined up, then we're probably in great shape for 20 years from now. What are the
typical, I mean, you have been teaching at many universities this copyright things, and why is it important, etc. What is the most typical mistakes usually people make in this field?
Let me give you a couple of examples. One is easy, and it's not realizing that they have the copyright already. You know, you know, because it's automatic. It's given to you automatically. And Mongolia and the United States are members of these big multinational agreements. And as soon as you jot down notes on your piece of paper, those are protected by copyright. And you have copyright protection for those notes in about 175 countries of the world, instantly and automatically.
As soon as you surf that copyright belongs to you?
Captured on the whatever kind of digital storage device is in the camera, as soon as it's captured, there is automatic protection. But that actually works to the benefit of somebody. Another mistake in this area, and a common business mistake that I have to go over repeatedly with my clients, with my colleagues, with everybody else, just because you paid for it doesn't mean you own your rights. This is a very, own the rights. This is a very common mistake. If I'm that filmmaker, and even if I pay you handsomely to write the screenplay, to write the music, or whatever else you're contributing, the general belief, based on just good sense and fairness, is if I paid you to produce that work, therefore it's mine. And that is not true under US law, it's not true under the laws of many countries, and as best as I understand the law of Mongolia, it's not true here either. We can pay each other a lot of money and we still don't own the copyrights. The copyrights haven't moved. So if I want that copyright to move from you, back to the example where you're the music composer and I'm the film producer, maybe I pay you a lot of money, maybe I don't. Either way, I need you to sign that document that moves that copyright over to me. So that's a very common mistake.
That's what really I think even our people even don't pay much attention. Let's go back to Mongolia. How you see the common issues here?
The issues here?
In Mongolia, yes.
Well, principally I've been working with film industry people, and it would be the need. Let me put a little different perspective on it. You've got some great artists in this country, and there's a real culture of filmmaking here, and they're terrific films, as we all know. However, what a lot of the filmmakers need to add to their thinking is they need to start to think like business people. The great successful artists of history have also been good business people, and they need to think like that. And that means they need to say that if I bring somebody into the film who's going to contribute to the finished product, I need an agreement with them. And I need to be a business person who takes control of my studio. And if somebody doesn't belong there and I don't have the agreement, you need to be able to keep people off the set. So one of my parting bits of advice to filmmakers is take control. Really take control. You're the boss. And if you're the one who's producing this film and you're the one who's making decisions about who contributes and who doesn't, take control. Keep people off the set if they haven't signed an agreement, and get people to sign an agreement before they contribute.
All of them, or?
Really, the only safe answer I can give to you is yes. You think of those credits, some modest number of names at the beginning of a film, and then all those people named at the end of a film.
Yes.
Chances are, if it's a big feature release film, somewhere in the process of their being hired, retained by whatever company to contribute to that film, there's an arrangement in place. By whatever's required under the law of whatever country they're working in, whether it's a transfer or a license or an employment arrangement, whatever does the trick under the law wherever they're doing their job.
Oh, this is a very sensitive and interesting issue here. I don't think everybody is doing that. As a result, I don't see there is a bigger problem on that today, but it may be coming anytime soon.
That's right. And really what I want to do is say, if you've got a fantastic film that you and your colleagues here in Mongolia have produced, I want the marketplace to see it. I want people to see the terrific work that's coming out of this country. And so the way we're going to do that, in part, is by making sure that we've got our agreements in place so that those foreign distributors will pick this film up.
Say a film producer uses folk song, say.
Folk song.
Yes.
Right.
Before that, the copyright idea, the laws. Please tell us the history of this copyright things.
Oh, sure. Well, the immediate short-term history is you've had copyright law in this country for a matter of decades, and of course there's a history of the law being borrowed from other countries, and that you're hardly alone in that respect. And the law that's in force and effect now in Mongolia is the Mongolian Copyright Act of 2006. So, you know, it's a dozen years old, and that's actually fairly new as these things go. But copyright law, as we recognize it today, as a legal system granting rights to authors and other creative people with respect to their books, art, any other works, goes back a little over 200 years. In the United States, for example, our first copyright law dates from 1790. And that's really at the beginning of the country. The Congress was first convened in 1789, so one of the first things they did was create a copyright law. And then beginnings spread through the 19th century were some international agreements, and particularly one that's called the Berne Convention, like the capital of Switzerland, B-E-R-N-E Convention. That it's a multinational agreement that's been in force and effect for about 120 years, a little bit more in fact.
That means it would be
It dates to 1886, and so it has about 175 member countries in it today.
175
and
countries.
one of the main things it does is it requires that member countries, think of all those countries, that's almost every country of the world, that each member country will grant protection to the works that originate in the other countries.
Okay.
And so therefore, when I go back home to the United States, a work from Mongolia is protected under U.S. law. If I carry a work from the U.S. here, it's protected under Mongolian law.
So every work that is consisting of intellectual input are generally now copyright protected.
And usually the standard you'll hear is a reference to some level of creativity. So scientific, literary, artistic works, audio-visual works like motion
All
pictures
creativity.
that have some minimal level of creativity are granted this legal copyright protection. So the fact is, nearly everybody who's big enough to pick up a paintbrush or crayons and start scribbling is probably a copyright owner.
I see.
So everybody who's viewing this out there is probably a copyright owner, whether they knew it or not.
Copyright owner. And speaking about this Berne Convention, 1886, every work created before that, all classical works, paintings, music.
It's a little bit more complicated than that, because what happens with these international agreements is countries sign on to them, as most of them have now done with this one, and there are many others too. And then it's really up to each country to say, okay, we've signed, which is a good faith commitment. Now we bring the standard home and we implement it in our law. But not to be confused with how long copyrights last. And so just chasing forward, instead of basing it on 1886, let's just look at today. If I take a photograph today, instant automatic copyright protection. Under the law of Mongolia, that copyright would typically last, typical situation, for the life of the author. So if I snap the picture, however long that lasts depends upon how long I live. So now you got to follow me around, see how long I live, plus 50 more years.
50.
50. In the United States, the rule is for the life of the author plus 70 years, 70. So it's a little bit longer. And that's largely because the European Union went to 70. The standard under the Berne Convention that I mentioned was life plus 50.
My question is...
So wait, go to your question.
The question is, for example, say Viennese waltz of Strauss. Who owns
Strauss
it?
waltz.
Copyright.
And so Strauss composes that waltz in, I don't know the exact year.
Okay.
What would you say, 1890,
yes.
something like that? The base, if we base that on the law as it exists in Austria today, because Austria is a member of the European Union, it's gone to a basic rule of life of the author plus 70 years.
Okay.
It's more complicated than that, but that's our basic.
Does the law works back.
It does. And so what it would mean is that we would generally say, what year did Strauss die? So we'd have to look that up.
So that with the Mozart, no problem.
We'd have no problem.
Yeah,
Mozart's been dead for 200 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
200 years.
So no problem. So what we do is we look back and we would say, well, yeah, maybe there were a lot of rules back at that time that were a little bit different from what we know today. But if it's so far in the past, then our 70 years have clearly gone by.
Not usually people raise probably the issue of classical music in that sense.
That's correct. So let's go to something more contemporary.
Okay.
You know, if you have a John Cage or, you know, a Bernstein composition.
Yes.
He's alive. No, he is not alive. But there are others that are alive, and their copyrights are going to last for their life, at least in the U.S., for the life plus 70 years. And in Mongolia for life plus 50 years. And then if we take somebody who died in recent couple of decades, like Bernstein, we're seeing that some of his years have already gone by.
Okay, then let's approach from the other side. Say today current famous composers in Mongolia, widely listened and people like respect, they use for movies those musics.
Right.
So in order to have copyrights from that author, what a film producer is to do is to come to him or pay money, or what? How does it work?
Probably yes. You know, and so if I want to use that existing musical composition in the motion picture, then I am going to, generally speaking, need to go find that copyright owner, whether it's the individual composer who may still be with us, whether it's a family or a friend or a favorite charity, whoever inherited the rights, maybe track that person down. Or as we see with many of these works, they've been bought and sold, and they're owned by some private company that's in the business of owning and licensing these rights. And so we need to be able then to go track down the rights to that company and secure that permission. Can I give you a really good example?
Yes, please.
Happy Birthday to You. One of the world's best known songs.
Yes.
And there was a company, it's very lucrative company in Los Angeles, in Hollywood.
They have right.
They have the rights, and they've been licensing it until somebody challenged them. And a court resolved last year that they have been wrongly licensing that work for years. That it actually, the copyright had run down, it had expired. The court ruled that it's in the public domain, ordered the company to reimburse people for money they had been paying. And now if you and I decide to make a movie and we want people in that scene to be singing Happy Birthday to You, at least under US law we can do it. And if it's true under US law in this example, it's probably very true in the law of Mongolia as well. Because the law is similar. And
so if, I mean, say in Mongolian movie, if people sing that song,
right.
I mean, any American song, you go and ask permission.
Unless it's in the public domain.
I see. This public domain?
Yes.
I mean, how do I know whether it is public domain or not?
You asked the toughest question.
Okay.
How do I know? And by public domain, just to make sure we're talking about the same thing, public domain in this context means it is without copyright protection. And in the examples we're talking about, it's because that song has been around so many years that the author has died and 50 or 70 or whatever number of years have passed. The copyright has expired. It's in the public domain. And that's a good thing. Then we can freely use it. But how do we find out? This is one of the just most horrible questions of copyright. Because very often, to determine who owns it, who created it, under what circumstances did they create it, remember those agreements we wanted the filmmakers to sign? Sometimes the answer is in those agreements. So now how do we find those agreements?
Is it like a company like YouTube, Google, are kind of in the guard of all these copyrights?
No. But they're in a really interesting position. YouTube, of course, is a subsidiary of Google, but they're in a really interesting position because you can go on YouTube and find music, lots of music, and some of it has been uploaded and made available by the people who are the copyright owners, so it's perfectly legitimate. Others have not. They've been uploaded by total strangers. Somebody who said, this is my favorite song, the world needs to hear it, and I'm going to upload it onto YouTube. And as the user, you don't necessarily know if it's up there properly or not. Then there's this chase that happens under the law where at least under US law where YouTube is located, there's a system of notice and takedown. So if the copyright owner company says, that's my song that's up there, they send a notice to YouTube and YouTube, generally speaking, removes it. Well, what they've done instead at YouTube is they've entered into negotiations and reached agreements with some of these big companies that own a lot of rights in different music and said, can we keep this up on YouTube and then pay you a fee? And usually the music company says, well, that's what we do, so let's see what kind of deal we can reach.
I see.
And so they reach a licensing arrangement.
Okay, then
to keep it.
let's take a very clear example. Some popular singer's song have been downloaded, listened millions of times.
Millions of times.
So
and
it may be the case that the singer has no clue about that.
That's
Yet people are enjoying her or his song. What to be in this case, say in Mongolia?
Yeah. There's so many things happening out there in the internet. And sure, are there improper uploads and downloads and systems?
But listening is okay on YouTube.
No, it's a mixed answer. There's no one answer. Because let's say I go on YouTube and I find my favorite song and I click it on and I enjoy it. What I don't necessarily know is it there lawfully or is it there in violation of the copyright? I don't know as the listener. So as the listener, I'm wondering, should I even worry about this? Because behind the scenes, it may very well be the copyright owner that put it up there in the first place. If it is, then everything's fine. Or it may be a total stranger who put it up there, but YouTube/Google negotiated with the music company and said, can we leave it there? And how much do we have to pay you to just leave it there? Because YouTube, they can share in the money. They can put advertising.
Then that singer may approach Google. In case Google did not approach before, her, she or he approached Google, that either go with that or stop with that.
Or stop it. And that's exactly what happens.
And then Google check whether that person is exactly the person or not.
Are you the right person?
Yeah, good. Because it's so huge topic, I mean, we cannot complete within 30 minutes everything. My last question is, you said that the copyright, the people don't know that they automatically have copyright, right? But let's say, but that person or their children will automatically have a copyright. Once it's approved by law document that this is she or he is a son or daughter.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
In case everything happened okay, but one day the child might say that this is my father's property and it belongs to me.
And that happens a lot.
It is legally, do they have the right?
They might be right. They might be right. Let's find out. Because if let's say my father wrote that book or wrote that piece of music, and then I learn a little bit about copyright, I watch this show and I learn that, hey, copyrights last beyond the death of the person. My father is no longer with us. And so I'd say, wow, maybe that copyright in that book or that piece of music is still valid. Maybe it's mine. Generally, the answer to that question is, to whom did he leave his estate?
If he did not leave any?
If he left everything either by will or by law
to
a spouse, mom,
Yeah.
then mom owns the copyright.
But he did not leave anything, let's say, then it
He had
belongs to the child.
no will. Yeah, then it goes by whatever the law says. And every country, every state has a different law on this question.
Then the child can
Yeah.
go again, continue getting that copyright on her name,
That's correct.
and then it can stay to the third generation.
That's correct. And if that child has brothers and sisters,
Yes.
they own it together. So if there are 5 brothers and sisters total, then each of them owns 1/5 of that copyright.
See. Oh, okay. Well, Kenneth, what you do is very important
Thank you.
because, you know, the whole idea is if you created certain value, you deserve it. And your income coming to that for that value, through that value, right?
Sure.
And only that makes sure that this market works.
And that's kind of the idea. The idea is to encourage people to create and publish and share it with the world so the world can benefit from it. And then the bargain is that at some point it expires and it's subject to other limitations. We didn't talk about that. So that in the meantime, the public can make some other uses of it. And we can all learn and grow together.
And
That's the idea.
it is good for everybody concerned.
It should, if it works well, it should.
And I think what you do here in Mongolia will make certainly our art and our intellectual rights more stronger, more protected, and thus more developed, I believe.
I hope I can help in
Thank
some
you.
way.
Thank you,
Thank you
Kenneth.
very much. Thank you.
Very pleased meeting
It's a
you.
pleasure.
Thank you. За хүнд үзэгчдээ өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор энэ олон улсын зохиогчийн эрхийг хамгаалдаг юм хуульч оролцлоо. Ялангуяа манай кино үйлдвэрлэгчид, хөгжмийн зохиолчид, энэ бүтээл, уран бүтээл хийдэг хүмүүсийн ажил амьдралд энэ хэрэг болох болов уу гэж найдаж байна. Их баярлалаа.